Elevate Me is brought to you by Scotiabank, the Spring Mill Distillery, and Wellington Motors.
All right. Welcome. Great to have you here, Josh.
We always say our special guest, but they really are special, and this one is as special as all the other ones. 3-time going on 4-time Paralympian, world record holder, mindset monster, the infamous or famous, actually not infamous, Josh Cassidy. So welcome.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me.
How
I thought you were going to say we usually bring on special people, but in this case, it's not that special, really.
This one's extra special because we're actually friends with Josh too, and I know a lot of your story, so I'm excited that people get to kind of hear it right from you. But we've had a lot of talks about mindset and mindfulness, and I love having those conversations with you. And how do you apply that to what you're going through right now? How crazy is this, like isolation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not too bad. Everyone knows that the Paralympics and the Olympics were postponed, and for me, I kind of was already going through a pretty tough time to start the year. I had a shoulder injury that re-aggravated, and in January, and I had been off training for almost a month, just doing rehab treatment. So for me, the delay was a blessing in disguise. What people are going through now, I was already kind of going through 2 months in advance, just wrapping my head around this, this idea that, okay, this year isn't starting the way I wanted. I wanted to go into the year training as hard as I can, as I always do, away for winter training camps. And that was part of my idea of what a successful 2020 would look like, with the Tokyo Games, being the goal. So I was just like getting my head wrapped around, okay, I'm still going to be ready. It's not starting out the way I expect, but you know what? I'm going to be ready when it counts. Mind frame switch. Maybe I'm taking more rest time right now. Maybe I don't need to be. It doesn't need to look this way. So yeah, sure enough, games are canceled. It was a shock, and and it. Actually, after I had a little bit of a chance to take a breath, it was a bit of relief to get some extra time in my personal scenario. So yeah.
Your personal scenario.
Yeah.
It's funny because so many people, when things happen to them, have a tendency to just give up, right? And yeah. It's I know it's not something we all have in common, right? But your 2020 didn't start out the way you wanted to, but you still were able to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. So what did you do to prepare yourself? What did you do to get yourself mentally ready to say, okay, things aren't going the way I want to, but I still have a job to do, and I still have to perform, and I still got to get it done?
Yeah, well, so our qualification process started last year. And then they basically don't name the team until like a couple weeks before the game. So it would have been in July. So I just had to look at things, and every opportunity you have to race at one of the international qualifiers, you have to take, right? So, when this happened, I just had to take a big breath. I mean, when I was probably, after like world championships, I had the injury, was recovering from it December, January, almost 95% back to full. And then out of nowhere, I couldn't even lift my arm. I couldn't even push my regular chair. I couldn't do anything for a couple of days. And to be honest, like I was in Florida at the time, and I was just like, I just had a breakdown. I was like, I can't believe this. You work so hard for this one goal, this one, objective, but having to do the mindset switch and think, okay, you know what? Skip January, skip February, skip March, maybe skip April. Okay, there's still time, and when it counts, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be ready. And basically, it's just like you got to let go of what you can't control and then control what you can. So what I could control was getting as much treatment as possible. It was doing the rehab work daily, being in the gym every day, even though I couldn't do my normal intensity workouts, still spending a couple of hours each day, doing the physio stuff, which is, monotonous and repetitive and not, as interesting or as intense, not what I want to be doing, but that's just applying that dedication and work ethic to whatever you need to do to get back. And then the toughest factor is just, believing that whatever this preconceived notion was to your path to success, okay, this was supposed to be the path. It's not going to be it anymore. Now you're on this path. You can still get to the same destination, but now you just got to find a new way to get there. And that's what I basically had to do.
Seems to be a really consistent theme. I mean, I think you can only do what you can do and then allow the rest to unfold. I know that, we've had a lot of discussions about this, Josh, and Mike and I have had a lot of discussions about this, but I want to take things a little bit back because I want to get to know your story a little bit more. Take us through, I know when you were young, you had neuroblastoma. I knew somebody with that and I know how serious that is. So I want to know, kind of take us through that challenge and how you kind of progress from there.
So for me, being born with cancer, like it is quite an odd scenario. But it was all I knew growing up. I just had to learn how to adapt and deal with it. And to me, it was a blessing because now, I was able to, in retrospect, learn how to overcome challenges and obstacles. And there were physical obstacles at first. And then I just applied, those lessons that I learned to all the other challenges in life. And that's how I fell in love with sport. I mean, sport is just voluntarily putting yourself in a challenge to be better, to learn, to grow. There's going to be heartbreak. You're going to put your heart and soul into something. You're going to be let down. Things aren't going to go your way. But, I just had that awareness at an early age that through those challenging times, there's going to be something always coming out of the other end that's going to be a positive. There's going to be an increase in strength and growth. And so yeah, I just started, I guess, falling in love with challenges, and sometimes maybe to a detriment. But I just wanted to see, all right, how much can I do? What can I accomplish? And that's what motivated me.
Now, how did you find the sport you're in now? Were there other sports before that, and you kind of trickled your way into it? How did that happen?
Yeah, I grew up loving hockey. Patrick Roy was my favorite goalie growing up, and we played road hockey on the streets and the military bases. My dad was in the military, so we moved all over, and so road hockey was hockey was my first real love. And then when I was in high school, I wasn't able to, I always found a way to adapt, and I had a lot of great gym teachers that adapted the game or worked with me to adapt things to participate. But when it came to the extracurricular, I couldn't, because of the health and safety, whatever regulations. I was very limited to what I could participate in. So I found out about the wheelchair event in track and field. I'd watched the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Jeff Adams, was someone who was competing in the sport for Canada, did extremely well, won medals. That motivated me, inspired me, and he was just inducted recently into the Canada Sport Hall of Fame. So that kind of got me going, and then it was actually a really chance coincidence of a Paralympic coach being in a restaurant in my small hometown, and he just approached me and asked if I was interested, and I said I just started, and he lent me my first wheelchair and got me networked, and kind of went on from there.
What was it about wheelchair racing? Because it's a very independent sport. Mm-hmm. It's really about pushing you mentally. I've always said I could never have been a track athlete. I'm definitely a team athlete. I don't know if I just don't like all that pressure on my shoulders. Yeah. But what was it about wheelchair that drew you? And were you drawn in instantly? Were you yeah, this is it?
Yeah, I think so, pretty quickly. And I had to be for the opposite reasons of you. I grew up as a, the oldest of 10 kids. So, we kind of grew up with the teamwork mentality, and being the oldest, I kind of was, automatically in kind of a leadership role. And I was good with that. But even in hockey, I didn't like playing goalie. I played goalie on my knees, and that's a lot more extra pressure. And I kind of got fire from the extra pressure. And from the individual sport. I played team sports like basketball and hockey for fun a lot, but I didn't mind that individual aspect where, okay, all the pressure is on my shoulders. You know, there's definitely a support network around me, but ultimately, you know, it's up to me for the win. And if, you know, if I lose, ultimately I'm the one to blame and to look at, and maybe in a bit of way, less pressure in that way, to know that, all right, well, I got to do something about this and I can control more in this scenario. So yeah, maybe that was it, but yeah.
I don't know about that. Less pressure. Sorry about that. That's definitely more pressure. More pressure for sure. When was it that you kind of were like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this and I want to take this further?
Well, through high school, you know, there was off-sun competing, and I remember the first time I just competed in my normal wheelchair, and it was against guys in racing chairs, and I definitely didn't win, but you know, there were other, you know, kids that I did beat too without the equipment. And it wasn't until I think it was my second last year of high school where I won the male athlete of the year for our high school, and I won OFSA silver that year. And the teacher who had introduced me said, you'll probably see him at the Paralympics one day. And I kind of thought about it or dreamed about it, but that was sort of the first outside affirmation of, hey, this is a possibility. Other people think so too. And you know, I could keep going at this and take it somewhere potentially.
And you've also taken that from the Paralympic field to other races, and you've set some pretty interesting records. You know, being good at something is one thing, and do you want to talk to us a little bit about some of the records, some of the world records that you hold and that you set?
Sure. Well, you know, something that, you know, I always knew is, you know, nothing happens overnight, and so, you know, my first national championships, I came dead last, and then a couple of years later, you know, I won my first ones, and then I went on a streak for 5 years of winning all the races, you know, that I was in Canada. My first big win was the London Marathon in 2010. And that was after my first Olympics, Beijing. But it marked the first time where I had beaten everyone internationally in the field. Like, there were some guys at that point who I had just never beaten in a race, and that was the first time. So quite a journey. If I started racing when I was, you know, 15 or 16, year 2000, 10 years before the first time that marked where, okay, I've beaten everyone in the world at least once in an event. And then from there, you know, it's one of those things. Yeah, I was gaining a lot of awareness and confidence, and even more fire to repeat and won some other big ones like Chicago, and then Boston was a really big one in 2012, where yeah, I won and then beat the world's fastest time by 2 seconds. So it was a humongous moment for me. And but you know what's always interesting though is, I mean, no matter how good the high is or how high the high is, like, there's always going to be these ebbs and flows and waves, right? And you know, with that success, there became the more pressure, like you're talking about, Helen, and then outside external pressure, and then expectations, and how do you deal with those? So in certain cases, it was confidence instilling, knowing that other people expected more, but then in other times, like, it was, you know, it was a detriment in ways, and it was more pressure and more frustrations and etc. So, you know, go in a little bit of a down slope and up, and it definitely at this point in my career, it's given me such a greater appreciation for you know, for the legends that have a long career full, like, you know, like Yarmir Yager, or, you know, like Gordie Howe, or, you know, Kobe Bryant, or whoever that had such a long career, and with age still, you know, were able to be on top of their game through struggles and pressure, etc. So, yeah.
Well, so I'm a big fan of people pushing themselves, right? And where I live is that journey of you becoming dead last and then going on to beating everybody internationally. Like, I live in that space, in the mental space of like, what was going through? So you lose, you're dead last. What happens after that? Do you just say, I suck at this, I have to get better? Like, what happens after that?
Oh, it always gives me more fire, for sure. Yeah. For sure, it gives me more fire. And then it was almost, in a weird way, it was almost like, after being at the top, it was almost like one thing after the other kind of had to go wrong for me to kind of hit rock bottom again, to get that full fire to go, back up again. And I know when I've done this, you know, I'll pick something, and I'm looking forward to the fire of, you know, career after athletics and being the nobody, you know, the bottom rung, and a new game to try and see how, you know, how much I can achieve and what I can learn and progress and do. So yeah, I'm in the same mindset, Mike.
So what did, like, when, I know for me personally, what elevated my game a lot too was, you talked about the one coach that believed in you. How important is that? Because I think in, not only in sport, but in life, I'm all about raising people, elevating people. And I think people respond so much better to believing in the goodness and the betterment of them, and in the biggest ability they can have, the greatest things they can do. Do you think that was an impact for you?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, it stands out for me as a moment where, you know, like I had already had the idea, but it kind of, you know, or maybe I don't know if I'd say it planted the seed, or the seed was planted and it gave it some water, you know, and for sure, you know. And on the flip side too, though, there's going to be the droughts that want to dry that seed of belief out too, right? And that also, though, you know, gives me fire. It has given me fire over the years in a different way, and you know, even to the stage of my career, like later on, where, okay, this was a guy who did it, and, you know, maybe he doesn't have it anymore to do it again, kind of thing. And then, you know, I was had a minor injury a couple of years ago, and I was kicked off the national team because I missed a couple important races from that injury, and I had to start from the bottom again, no funding, no anything. And had to sell my condo to kind of take care of bills and life. And, you know, it's a stage in my career too, where it was like, a lot of people would have just said, you know what, now's the time. Or if, you know, they had kids or whatever, that might've just been like, you know what, it's just not worth it. But, you know, it gave me fire, and the position I was in, luckily, fortunately enough to push through it. And I was already on the mend when that decision was made. And a couple months later, I was ranked back up in the top 5 in the world, and went on that year to push the best numbers I've ever had in training my whole career. Unfortunately, it was a year of 5 or 6 marathons of flat tires and one thing after the other, where, you know, again, it's like, it almost doesn't matter. I mean, in a way it matters because that's what you work towards. But the truth within me, I know what I was able to do and achieve during that year. But you know, the results are sometimes what the world sees are just the goal. And when they're done, you know, you got to just move forward and continue on and go to the next, and dare yourself, push yourself to be better. You know, that's really all you can do.
Biggest struggle you've had to date? What's been the biggest challenge for you?
That was a really tough year for sure. You know, both financially, mentally, but it was almost in a way, like we just mentioned, like with Mike too, is like, you know, when no one believes in you anymore, it's all right. Okay, pressure off. I'll show you guys, and kind of want to stick it to them. But that started out really tough. You know, there was definitely a couple of other times or losses where it was like one thing after the other of just not working out. Those things that felt like they aren't in your control, and you're doing everything you can. You know, those are tough. Honestly, this past January was one of the toughest. And it's been those times, I think, where everything happens at once. You know, everyone knows when everything falls out, and, you know, personal life, financial, work, you know, and it was one of those scenarios again, or one of those scenarios earlier on a couple of times where that had happened. But yeah, but in sport, definitely, you know what, it may have even just been this past January, just like, all right, I don't know how much longer I've got left. And things have been going after, you know, overcoming so much again and being at the top of my game ever. And then an injury, and the clock's ticking for me. And I want to, you know, prove something to myself, see what else I can do with the time left. and something else happened out of my control. So yeah, overcoming that and moving forward. And now, there's, a bit of a breath, and I feel blessed for this personal extra opportunity to recoup. But yeah.
Now, what would you attribute that drive and determination to? Can you trace that back to one moment? Were you always that way as a kid? Where does that come from?
That's a good question. I think about that now and then too, Michael. And like, I think there's definitely isn't a moment. It felt like it was always something in me. And like so much of who we are is our early years in life, and for better or for worse. And I think a lot of it has to be attributed to those early years of being in the hospital a whole bunch, and those obstacles, and just wanting to go outside and play and have fun and do things. And so I think there was a really early an appreciation for life. Also, maybe what was just within me was I don't like being told I can't do something. So, all right, I'm going to try and see how far I can do this or what I can do. So that was definitely a driving point. Or, various schools, that I had grown up moving across Canada. Some were awesome, and some, would get bullied at times, or wouldn't be allowed. Other people wouldn't let me, play the games with other kids or play sports. So, that I'm sure that gave me a different fire. I had a really supportive family and extended family that, I was, blessed to have for encouraging me. I don't think I really got special treatment being the oldest of 10. There's, so many kids that, I had responsibilities. I had to take care of kids and help out, change diapers, all that kind of stuff as a kid growing up. But even the big family, having to learn how to take care of yourself and make things happen for yourself too, despite the extra support of a big family. It was kind of like everyone also had to go out on their own and do what they needed to do. If they wanted to do something, it wasn't going to be someone else doing it for them. So yeah, those are some things early on in life, I think, that I would attribute to, but yeah, always a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah, I always wonder that, the whole nature nurture debate, and where does that drive come from? And I think, as we get older, we learn and we evolve and we change. How do you deal with your struggles? Like, is there a process that you go through? Is there some way you get yourself revved up again and into a positive state?
Yeah, I think with time, it's certainly become easier. You kind of identify what's happened, what's going on. You've gotten through something tough before. So, that if you've gotten over it before, you can do it again. There's definitely, a realization of, you got to look for, first of all, the controllables. What can I do to positively affect this? And then after that, it's, what you need to let go of and just move forward. And then the mindset change is the biggest part. How do you reframe whatever struggle or obstacle that you're facing so that you can look at it as an advantage? So for example, like I talked about, this past January, having the injury re-aggravated and having to be basically sidelined from training for weeks or was almost months, really. I haven't been at full intensity of training. And when the games were still supposed to be this summer, the mind frame switch I had to have was, okay, before I was thinking, I've got to be in January in Florida and Dubai and here and getting this meet and this result for the next 4 months, to all of a sudden, half of that being wiped clean, taking away all those expectations, but then having to think, okay, that really doesn't matter because the big goal is here, Tokyo, at the end of the summer. So I need to reframe this and look at this. Okay, maybe I'll be more rested and I'll have a slower progression to my goal instead of trying to get on right away and do these intense competitions and, risk of other injury or what have you. So I had to do the mind frame switch of it being, okay, I've got more time, or I've got time to rest, slowly build, and I'll still be on when it matters. And that was really the only option. And then once you have that kind of, I guess it's sort of a silver lining, or it's a positive, mental approach perspective to look at the situation and reframe it. that's what starts the belief process to be able to keep moving forward for me.
And now those lessons, those are things you've started to speak corporately about, right? Teaching organizations how they can use some of those same strategies to become better organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And it's basically, I think everyone in life, I mean, we've all got these challenges, and we've got to deal with them every single day. And, you know, whether they're, you know, personal with life or with work, you know, I'm not an expert in, you know, tech or economics or business or what have you. But there's still a universal mind frame switch that has to happen. So, you know, I've gone into companies at times that are going through difficult times or challenging times, and you know, maybe product sales are down, or maybe there is a restructuring, or you know, there's going to be layoffs coming up, or whatever the situation may be, which are going to be very difficult times. And even though, you know, it's a different situation and I'm not in their shoes, it's, you know, applying a perspective and you know, and a mindset and approach to what that struggle is, to kind of just help give the tools for people to get through whatever it is that they're struggling with a little bit easier.
Good. So you think we shouldn't, I mean, this is how I think as well. We shouldn't really run away from the things that are happening to us, right? That they're happening to us. I mean, it's not even good or bad. It just is, right?
Yes.
And so here we are, and back to something I said that my dad used to always say, was just, so what? So or basically not even who cares, but so now what? What are we going to do now that we're sitting here? And then that's what I hear from you, is that kind of Olympic mindset. Because again, not everyone who's good at a sport becomes an Olympian. Like there has to be there's a switch in there somewhere that someone goes that extra mile to become a little bit of an extra human being.
Totally. And like I said too, like my first love was hockey, right? So I mean, in my mind, it was becoming an NHL goalie when I was 6 or 7 years old, not knowing the challenges or restrictions that I'd face. Hey, maybe in a different reality and what I knew now, if I could coach myself in a way or whatever, who knows, maybe I could have put myself in an opportunity to play ice hockey and be at a level that would be there. But it's something that I had to let go of and apply that same passion to, you know, a different kind of dream. So, you know, like you said, it's, you know, just kind of like reframing how you look at the scenario or situation and what you can do with it. There was something else really good that you said. I'm trying to, what was the last thing? What was the other last thing you said?
I said, well, one thing I always say is that, you know, I think sometimes people tend to sit in the boo-hoo, which is natural. I find myself sometimes, you know, things happen and you react, but it just is a fact. It's just happening. So I have no time for, let me tell you, when the lights go out, you want me around. Like you're going to want me.
Exactly. So, and that's the other thing. It doesn't mean that you can't be upset for the crappy things that happen to you. Like, let yourself be upset. Like, you have a reason to be, you know. I've experimented with the shut it off right away in recent years because I've been criticized of like, you know, you got to move forward or this or that because I'm struggling with them. I'm definitely capable of that too. So I decided to test the waters and see, all right, how quickly can I switch? And I can switch really fast now, but there were times where looking back, I needed to actually just let myself be in that upset state a little bit more. But it is a danger. The longer you are, you know, the more your energy shifts and from there dominoes fall differently. But the quicker that you can somehow reframe and bounce back. And it's really just utilizing the emotions that you have. Right. So I've realized that okay, you can be upset about something or you can be happy and confident. I've won some of my biggest races, upset, heartbroken, you know, under pressure, under the gun, angry. And I came up and I rose up and I got and I won a race. I've also been on the flip side where I've been confident, calm, chill, not feeling pressure, just feeling good and won races too. I've also lost races in both scenarios. I've been angry and that's made me too distracted or my technique wasn't as good. And, you know, that became a detriment to me, less focus. And then on the flip side, I've been too confident before and too relaxed, and maybe not enough fire, and that was a detriment. So rather than sometimes, I think that there will always still be a little bit more success when you're in a state of ease and confidence and relaxed, because you're saving energy for a moment that matters. Even though it's possible in both ways, it's just kind of understanding how to utilize the emotion you have for fuel to propel yourself forward. I think that I've found.
I like that. I think that makes so much sense. Using, instead of concentrating on the emotion, using the emotion, right? Because even when the emotion is good, just concentrating on that good emotion isn't going to be enough to get the job done. But using that good emotion to fuel and propel you. This may be a bad analogy, but I always bring everything back to chickens and gardening and farming.
Mike's the farmer, by the way.
Every conversation. But I have a compost pile, and it's filled with, it's chicken shit, right? Chicken shit and straw. But I always tell people, like, you can, I can just leave it alone and let it build and gather, and it could just be filled with E. coli and all sorts of bad, nasty, the next flu pandemic. Or I can use it, and add aerobic activity to it and turn it into the best compost the garden's gonna have. I couldn't even buy the stuff. It's so good. And based on what you said, I can use it aerobically, which is, using air and oxygen to turn it. But there's also a method where you can use it anaerobically, which is kind of stinky, but it's still very powerful, using it as a tea, fertilizer, whatever. So it's same product, same two different strategies, but both can be very bad or very good depending on how you use it. So
that's right.
There you go.
So important. I mean, Mike and I have said all along, every time something happens, we're like, okay, we just got to go with the flow. And that's so important to take those moments, for sure, where like even during this period of time, where there's times where you're like, oh man, this really sucks, and I'm really sad and really down, to, okay, now what? Now what? Now where do we go with the present situation in a way that directs us in a positive way? And I think that's so important and you do that with businesses too, right? Like, what do we do now? Like, how do we take this situation and move it forward? And I know we've talked a lot about mindset, but man, so much happens up here. And once we start to direct our minds a little bit more and control how we think, so powerful.
Yeah. And like you said, right now too, for me personally, again, like I had mentioned my personal situation, but I mean, I've been asking the universe for more time. I've got so much on my plate, so much that I want to do. And it's like, you can't actually receive more time than the whole world going on pause. So my reframe for this was, all right, I've got time now that I didn't have before, in a way, to get caught up, do certain things that I had wanted to before. When a time comes like this too, it's always like, there's a challenge. What can I do to be ahead coming out of the other end? And that's what I would encourage, everyone else in their personal situations to do is, what can I do right now that I couldn't before with this time that I have, and there was, a lot of people are picking up hobbies and finally having time to meditate, reconnect with their families, but business wise, what can you do right now to be ahead of the game? What can you do right now to start adapting? Let's say this scenario goes on for another year. Like, what do you do right now so that you're ahead of the game in a couple of months? And how have you adapted your business or your life, et cetera? So, I think that's going to be a huge lesson for a lot of people, and the ones that can do that quicker will come out easier. There's going to be a lot of hardships, like the thing I'm most concerned about is, the kids that are, maybe aren't in homes that, are healthy and domestics and these kinds of things. So, it's all of these things. It's always just going to be cause and effect, right? And no matter what challenge it is, there's always a cause for why it happens. When you see how this is all unraveled, every single part of it, like from the political, the economic, to the health, to the environment, every single part, there's been a cause and effect. And so if we take a breather right now, and just try and project forward, what is the effect of now this going to be? And that's kind of like, now you kind of know, if you kind of can project forward, you can prepare yourself to what you need to do to be able to be ahead when this is done, I think.
I think that's so good. I think that, you know, a lot of people out there don't necessarily even know what the goal line is. And this is why I love sports so much, and why, you know, we created the Guelph Games, is that, you know, when you're in a game, when you're in a race, there's a finish line. You know exactly where you're going, and you know what you have to do to get there. And I think that if you take the time now to at least figure out what your goal line is, you know, then you can figure out what the steps are to go through it. You know, one of the things that always bothered me is I'm trying to think of an example, but, you know, you turn on the news and then you hear some plant is closing down, and, you know, someone says, you know, 20 years and I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I'm like, but you had 20 years. You had 20 years to do something else on the side, right? And I think that now now is the time. I'm at the point now where I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be over soon. Have I taken enough advantage of the opportunity being given to me? You know, it's going to be over. So my panic now is that I haven't done enough in this downtime, right? This universal downtime. So it's I hope everyone is paying attention to that.
I'm starting to feel that too. At first, it was definitely a breather, and I just feel like the world needed a breather too. Like, you know, the speed that we operate and how much we are go, go, go. Like, it doesn't surprise me that energetically, like, we were at a breaking point that we needed a breather, right? But yeah, I feel the same way, and now I'm looking ahead, and you know, when there is no definite goal line, when there is no definite end to this, that's when you have to self-implement your own goal lines and stick to them. Okay, what do you want to do? Set a date and, you know, work backwards from there. How do you get to that goal, and how do you get yourself ahead? And yeah, for a lot of people, the biggest struggle will be the change. All human beings, change is the most difficult part, right? So people that are losing jobs that have been there a long time, you know, I'm not in that position, so it's easier for me to speak to it out of emotion of it. But like, in the times where I've been in that situation, it's being grateful for what you have had and looking at it always as an opportunity. Every challenge, every roadblock, all right, the future was set before, and even when it's quote unquote set, there can be always something that will knock it off, and it won't go as you expect. Okay, it's been knocked off right now. You've got a clean slate. This is a gift and a blessing for you to be able to maybe create some new possibilities for yourself in your future that you didn't have before because you were just too much in the tunnel moving forward, right?
Yep.
What are you doing now? Like, are there any strategies or any new things you're doing, or any routines that you have started while you're kind of a little bit more isolated?
Well, one thing from an athletic standpoint, I've given myself more time for my shoulder. So instead of trying to push it, I've been, you know, doing more recovery and rest rather than trying to push the healing to try and be ready for the summer. But personally, I've been the creative stuff that's been on the back burner that I love. I went to school for illustration, and, you know, plan to continue with art and then music stuff that I haven't touched. So I've been in the studio for a bit in the last week or two, doing the things that I also, other things that I love that I haven't in ages. So that's been a blessing. And then just, getting caught up on the little things, you know, just kind of decluttering and all those little things that have been on the to-do list for too long, and getting through them. So it feels like when this comes out the other end, you know, that to-do list has been completely emptied, and I've gotten to things that I never thought I wouldn't have gotten to yet. So that's been my goal.
Are you gonna let us listen to some of that music?
Someday. Maybe soon.
I want to hear it. Yeah, it's funny. I've given myself permission to just chill. Even like normally I'm such a go. Like I'm like, especially when we were preparing for these Guelph Games. I mean, we were literally working 24/7, and it was a weird kind of step back and like, what do I do now? Like I'm so used to constantly being busy. But I've definitely embraced it to the point where I'm like, okay, now you're going to have to switch gears again to go back to, you know, maybe not as extreme. Like you said, it's almost like you take these moments, you embrace them, and then you learn there has to be some balance, right? Yes.
And I've definitely taken more balanced time as well, just for myself. And then also, like my girlfriend, she has two little boys, twin boys. So, you know, being able to just kind of be without you know, the looming pressure and ticking clock of what's coming. But yeah, I can imagine for you guys and the games, and you know, on a sort of similar path, but you know, like the games and how are they looking at things and having to re-strategizing and all the corporate deals and planning and logistics that will have to change. But I'm sure after the initial, you guys are also in a position where it's like, okay, what now can we do with a year's more time to make them even better? You know, spread more awareness about it, get more participants, maybe get more sponsors or whatever. And then when that kind of happens, it's kind of like the same with, I'm hoping the same with the Tokyo Games, you know, or Team Canada. You know, I was on a conference call there, and it was also the same thing. You know, they were looking at releasing the uniforms and all this stuff. Well, okay, well now maybe we can release the uniforms much further in advance and get a whole great marketing campaign going so that we get a lot more viewers for the games when they come. So it's such a unique scenario when the whole world is in the same boat, essentially. Different positions on the boat, but we're all in the same boat.
I think that's it. Everyone, that's the saving grace. Everyone is in the same spot. You're not the only business that's struggling. You're not the only person that's struggling. You're not the only athlete that's struggling. Every single person on the planet from here to China is facing the exact same thing. So, and that one of my favorite quotes is, you know, other people have done more with less. So anytime I'm in it, you know, I think someone else has gone through this or is going through this and has less than I even have to get out of it. And
totally.
So what do I have to do to get out of it? I mean, it's you know, silver lining. You know, I mean, we have partners that couldn't come on board because there wasn't enough time left to come on board that are now right now things are changing. Now scenarios have changed. This series is something that was born because of what happened. And that has created other opportunities for us. So, you know, back to just using that shit and turning it into sugar, you know.
Yeah.
It just is. So how do we take the recipes, the pieces we have, and just create a new recipe with the same ingredients or different?
And I hope on a bigger scale we do this too, like you know, as a planet, you know, in government, economically, you know, like we're having to live without going to the store all the time. And recently I've been just looking at the store, look at all of this commercial stuff, all of this product, all the space it's taking and the pollution it's creating. And, you know, maybe this can be, I'm hoping, a wake up call for people that, you know, not needing to have so much more and live in excess, or not needing to drive so much and be more at home, for people to be able to be out in nature more and go for walks. I'm seeing more people on socially distanced walks, but walking outside nevertheless than I've ever seen before. And, you know, hopefully that this kind of raises a consciousness. There's going to be the other effect where there's people that are going to be struggling for survival, literally, you know, that we're going to need to be mindful of and help and work together to, you know, protect and assist. But yeah, I think big picture too, it's like, there's been always so much like, well, we can't do that. Like we can't change, you know, capitalism. We can't change, you know, the oil industry and all us running on cars overnight. We've just literally shut down the planet overnight. Tell me what we can't do if we all just have the motivation and initiative to just go and make things happen. So I hope that turns on some light bulbs for people in positions of power and people that have, you know, the platform and the position to make big change. But really it's just every single one of us, because we're all one, you know, cohesive organism that we all play a part. And you know, I'm just hoping and trusting that you know, this will open people's eyes and minds up to you know, to a better future that we all can create together, you know.
Be the change.
So powerful. And I think it's a good example too, looking at the, you know, when anything happens to you and you think, well, I can't do this or I can't do that.
Don't like that word.
But then really looking at it, like the whole planet shut down. The things that we thought couldn't happen happened. The whole planet shut down. So if that can happen, then you can literally do anything. You can you can cause your world to shut down and then be reborn into something completely brand new. You can quit your job and go back to school. You know, when you think it's unthinkable, you'll still survive. Things will happen, things will shift, And if it's for a better world later, then great. And I don't know about the whole capitalism thing because I have packages coming to my house every other day. So I probably bought more things in the last month than normal. But you know, I think that's just to keep me sane. I think if I was going outside, I probably wouldn't.
Not that there's anything wrong with but it's just we've just lived in excess a lot, but there is so much that we've been blessed with in today's world, that we can have and create, but just the quality over quantity is all I'm getting at.
Oh no, definitely. I'm with you. And just a lot of the things I'm getting are drip irrigation systems and all the fun gardening.
Of course.
Stuff, so it's all good.
Awesome. Well, I think that was a great conversation, and exactly, I mean, I hope people play and replay this because there's some great information and great tidbits that we can all take from it. And I think it is just about, being in this moment, really experience this moment, like live in it and feel it and feel everything about it. Feel the good, feel the bad, feel the everything in between, and grow and learn from it. The whole reason we came up with the Elevate 9, which is the official name of what this is, even though it's Elevate Me, was Elevate for me was just about everybody elevating and rising up and building people up. And the 9 was very symbolic of anytime you wish, you can shift and you can create a new cycle. And it's kind of like Mike said, this was born, we didn't even know we were going to do this. We had absolutely no idea. We started talking about it, and then I was like, this has got to be part of Elevate 9 because it is about rising up. And now, so perfect, it's just a new cycle. We start a new cycle, and hopefully everybody sees that as you have a chance to start a new cycle. Any day you wish, you started today, you can start tomorrow, start next week, but we can start a new cycle and rebirth something beautiful.
Definitely. Well, thanks so much for having me, and I'm so glad that you guys are doing this and that you guys are leading this, because I know you both have the mindset and perspective to guide these talks in a direction that everyone needs to hear, and including myself. We need each other and perspective constantly. So glad you guys are doing this.
Thanks.
Well, thank you,
Josh.
Thanks for the words. Thanks for the motivation.